Attention, everybody. The views and opinions expressed on the show are not necessarily those of Acts Ministry, Acts Media Group, and or their affiliate and supported ministries and or nonprofits. Sorry we're late. It's the internet's fault, but they're here to talk to us about fun times. It's the Happy Hour with Dr. Paul and Nancy. Take it away.
Hello, everybody. Welcome. If you're still hanging around, hanging out, waiting for us to come on, don't blame us. You blame the World Wide Web. The World Wide Web sometimes is like a big spider web, Nancy. Somebody comes along, punches a hole in it, or one strand gets disconnected, and all of a sudden, what Al Gore claimed to have invented has some faults. Remember, Al Gore said he invented the internet. How about that? Anybody still remember who Al Gore was?
No, I remember the name.
He was vice president for 8 years during the presidency of William Jefferson Clinton, whose real name was William Jefferson Bly, B-L-Y-T-H-E.
That rhymes with lie.
Probably Blytheville, Arkansas, may have been named after members of his real family. Anyway, we're here, folks, and it is the last edition of the Happy Hour. After this show, no more Happy Hour, because we will be moving to Mondays, and that will be the first Monday in April, which is like about April the 5th, I think, something like that. So mark it down. No more Happy Hour on Fridays at 10 o'clock Central Daylight Time now, but we will be doing a new show on Monday mornings at 10 o'clock Central Daylight Time, and we begin with the first Monday in April because Acts Media Group is doing some reprogramming, as most broadcasters do. Periodically, they shift the programming around. Anyway, we'll be doing a new show instead of the Happy Hour. Nancy and I will be presiding over something we call the bucket list. Now, the bucket list, some folks are familiar with it, means things in your bucket that you want to get around to someday. And we have on our bucket list some day trips we want to take. Remember, Nancy, when we both first so-called retired? You retired from nursing, and I retired from teaching at a local college. Each day that week, we went a different direction, and it was so that we could go and get back in one day. They were day trips. And in so doing, on maybe about the second trip, we reconnected with an old friend that we hadn't seen in over 30 years. Remember that?
Mm-mm.
Paul Throckmorton?
Oh, yes.
Cookies Cafe in Golden City, Missouri. Walked in there and got ourselves a place to sit, and I asked the waitress, I says, is Paul Throckmorton, is he still alive, around? Is he, still around here? She said, yeah, he's sitting right over there. So we reunited. That was the benefit of a day trip. But anyway, come the first Monday in April, mark it down, folks, and tell a friend. By the way, hit the like button and share, because we got to build this audience back when we move to the first Monday in April, called the bucket list. And of course, we'll always greet our friends like Shirley Simpson and Jerry Chambers and Judy Nickel and Galen Garrett and so forth. All of our friends, we'll greet all of them, all those up around Lubbock and Ransom Canyon, Texas, and all those in northeast Missouri, so forth. And we not only will do that, but we will, with the new show, what we'll be doing is what I call drilling down deep. We will take subjects that are important, especially to people at least 50 years old. However, they will, in my mind, they should start planning when they're like 40. So I'm going to tell you folks, yesterday I was 40. So guess how old you're going to be tomorrow. I mean, the time goes that fast. Mm-hmm. And if I had known when I was 40 what I know now, you and I would have been debt-free before we were 50, before I was 50. I had to learn it late, and I'm happy to report Nancy and I are debt-free. We don't owe on real estate. We don't have car payments. We don't carry a credit card debt. We are debt-free, and we never made a lot of money. Fact is, we made very little money. We were in that group of people that were honestly quite underpaid, and so that as a pastor, I never made any money. I used to tell people Nancy, working as a nurse in a nursing home, supported my ministry habit. The most I ever made as a clergyman was $1,250 a month. That's not a lot of money. And then I was driving about 85 miles 3 times a week to do that. And so I didn't really make any money doing that, obviously, wear and tear on cars and all that. So what I'm trying to tell you is this. We're going to offer you some things on the bucket list that will help you beginning in 40, by the time you're 40. If you want to get out of debt, we're going to tell you some things to do. In fact, I want to tell folks right now, and you need to mark this down, the directions I followed from the Holy Spirit. Now, folks, you might as well get used to the idea. I come at things from, I don't mean to be confrontational about this. It's just a fact. I speak from my background, my world. I'm a clergyman, have been for many years. I started preaching when I was 19. I'm 85. I'll be 86 in June. I've been at it a long time. I'm starting my 67th year. In January, I completed 66 years of preaching, so I've been at it a long time. That's just who I am. I try not to turn this show, and never have, the Happy Hour, into a preaching show, but it's only fair disclosure for you to know that much of what I tell you comes from my point of view as someone who has spent the bulk of his life in Christian ministry rather than someone who spent the bulk of his life in the business world. Nothing wrong with that. I depend on business people. But so instead of hearing what I'm about to tell you from a banker, I heard it from the Holy Spirit. Mm-hmm. And I remember reading a book by an old preacher one time, and he said, if the banker knows more about your money and your business than God, you're in trouble. Than the man of God, you're in trouble. And it's not the bank's business to help you out of trouble necessarily. The bank's business is to make money, and we understand that. They have a role to play. So anyway, what I heard was, first of all, I needed to learn to save. And I started doing that, found ways to do it. Then I had to learn how to invest. I found ways to do that, even with very small amounts of money. And then I had to learn ways to spend, which meant not spending, and I learned to do that. And then I had to learn how to get money. So it was just the opposite of what they usually are teaching people. Are teaching people to get money, spend money, invest a little, saving. They really don't stress it.
Tell everybody how you started saving.
I started saving because instead of meeting my buddies for coffee 5 mornings a week, and I was buying the coffee, I just stopped meeting them, saved that coffee money, which was about, with tip and me buying the coffee, $20 to $25 a week, which is like $80 to $100 a month if there's 4 weeks in a month, or that could be $100 to $125 a month, depending on how many weeks are in the month. And that doesn't sound like a lot of money these days, but it's still a lot of money to me. Used to tell people in meetings that if they'd lost a $20 bill between where they were sitting and out by the car on the parking lot, they'd probably be out there looking for it. I think they still would for the most part. $20 bill is still, to me, a big deal.
I know, but the deal about the coffee was it was almost like a habit.
Oh, it was an unnecessary habit. It was just something I was doing, not thinking anything about how it was adding up.
Exactly.
Think what that added up to in a year, 2, 3 years.
Yes.
So little is much when God is in it, and that little bit I invested in putting together a seminar in a small town and in a small theater, and brought in a speaker, and the revenue from that was enough to purchase. I reinvested into that which, as a speaker, helped me. It was my first lapel mic. So it was an investment into equipment, and followed that pattern along the way. And I also learned about spending. That there are people who have, they don't really have a money problem, they have a spending problem. I know someone who's very close to us that just, as we used to say when I was a kid, money would burn a hole in his pocket. Had money, had to spend it. Spend, spend, spend. There are people who have a spending habit. We're going to help you with the bucket list along the way. We're going to help you with the spending habit. I became a great shopper and a lousy spender.
That's true.
Now, I'm not tight. I'm not selfish.
No, he's not selfish at all.
I'll give to other people. I'll help other people, but I just don't need all that stuff. I don't need the gadgets, the trinkets, and the clothes, all that sort of thing. I have what I need. I don't need the rest of that. So I'm a great shopper and a lousy spender. Mm-hmm. And then once you have your head clear about saving and investing and spending, that balance, that's when you will see how to get money that you can hang on to, that you will again save and invest and not spend, and all of a sudden you'll be debt free. Really, it works. So anyway, we'll deal with some of that. What are we doing now? I thought this last issue of the happy hour, we just tell the folks basically what we do, Nancy, because I don't preach every Sunday. In fact, basically what I'm doing now is twice a month on a Sunday afternoon is teaching a small group of people. I'm teaching them Bible. I'm teaching them some theology, some Christian history, church history, doctrine, and so forth. So what do we do? Well, once in a while I do a Facebook video during the week, and I try to do one on Sunday mornings for a few minutes to speak to folks, to encourage them. But we stay very busy because I process about 200 emails daily, and you taking care of the house and our kitty Hannah and all that goes with that, and the yard, frees me up to be in front of that computer where I can do email and not only processing email that comes in, but then writing emails that go out. So that's part of what we do. That's quite a ministry to communicate. And folks, believe me, it's important to be a communicator. These communication devices, use them. That's what they're for. I had a friend who's now with the Lord in heaven that he never answered his cell phone. He let it take messages all day long. And in the evening, he'd sit down, he'd just scroll through, and the ones he wanted to answer, he'd press the button and answer them without even listening to the message. He'd just call them back. That's not a good way to... Communication is a two-way street. It does no good for me to communicate with you, tell you something unless you communicate back. It doesn't do you any good to tell me something unless you hear back from me. How are you going to know I heard it? How do you know that it registered up here with me? So good communication, we'll deal with that. That'll be a part of the bucket list, because one of the things you'll need to know how to do as you get older, you'll need to know how to communicate, and that's a two-way street. So we help people with that. What you might say is that I do a lot of consulting because you take care of the house and the yard and the laundry and the cooking and all that sort of thing. Then I have my time free to do consulting. I've been consulting with someone about their reverse mortgage, for instance. They need to get out of it. And for medical reasons, they need to be able to move closer to medical facilities. I don't have all the answers, but I know people, so I referred them to the right person. And this person said, yes, I can help them. I know how to do that. And so that's in the mill. I guess you would say as a consultant, they ask me something. If I don't have an answer, I try to find someone who does have the answer. I've made referrals not only to real estate people, but I've made referrals to people who needed legal help, and I knew which lawyer does which kind of work and so forth, and I would refer them to the right kind of lawyer. Because I'm one that's had 4 stents, I still have them, as far as I know they're still in there, in these coronary arteries. And I think I'm going to sneeze in a little bit, so hang on. That's a good sign we're on live TV. Anyway, as they say in French, excusez-moi, s'il vous plaît. So, I have these 4 stents. I have a pacemaker, and at getting, I might as well say, getting very close to 86 years old, I'm very viable, work every day, healthy enough. And my weight stays down. I'm about 15 pounds more than I was when I was in high school. Not bad. I weigh 160. So, and I'm 5'8" if I stand straight. I used to be about 5'10", but you shrink as you get older. Anyway, there are people that make inquiries of me about health, and I'm not a doctor. I didn't even play one on TV. But I do know some basic principles, but I know who to refer them to. That's the main thing. And I usually am able to give them more than one option, so that I keep myself very much in the clear. Look, folks, here's 3 things you can do, three options that I know of, that I've had experience with. It's up to you. For instance, I have a primary care physician. I have a bone doctor. I have a heart doctor. I have a skin doctor. And then I have a friend who is a medical doctor in the Panhandle of Texas, who teaches at the university there in the medical school and has a big private practice. And he's a good resource person, even though he doesn't take new patients. He's great to answer questions. So, we do that kind of consulting as well. And we're very careful with it. And if people want to know about my diet, what I eat, I tell them. There's some folks that are on the Mediterranean diet, some are on the Atkins diet, some are on the keto diet, some are on the Optavia program of Mike Krimper and Heidi. And there's a variety of diets out there, and people want to know, well, what kind of diet am I on? Well, after the first heart attack, I became a total vegan. I followed the Esselstyn diet and lost the weight, and I've kept it off. But I'm no longer a vegan. I am mostly vegetarian, but not totally. Once in a while, I have a little bit of a chicken breast or a little bit of beef. I'm not a total vegetarian. It's not a thing with me like, real strict. I try to be balanced and moderate. Moderation, that works for me. I don't know what will work for you, but I know I watch sugar, I watch salt, and I watch fat, and I eat a lot of salads, and I love bananas and apples. So that's kind of it. Any bread that I eat is very healthy bread. It's made from sprouted bread, salt-free, sugar-free, etc. I like it. Now, folks, my diet may not work for you, or you may not like it. It takes a little while to learn to like something. I tell people, give it a little time. Actually, you can change habits. They have said in 21 days you can change a habit, change the way you eat, get rid of cravings, all that. I figure some folks it may take 28 days. So what? If you really want to change, if you really want to get healthier, if you really want to lose weight, find a program and get good advice, good counsel. Good advice, good counsel, not just from anybody. People who have some credentials, who know something. For instance, I asked our primary care physician, who's been a guest on this show twice, beautiful little woman, Dr. Durfee, bright. She is so smart. She's an MD. And I asked her one day about all these meds that I take for blood pressure and cholesterol and so forth. And if there was any way I could cut back on them or this or that or something else. And she looked me right in the eye and she said, Well, they're keeping you alive, you know. I said, enough said. I try to be a good partner with my healthcare providers. I want to be a cooperating partner. They work with me, I work with them. Now that's communication. That helps. So anyway, yeah, we do some consulting about health. Nancy, we are so diversified. I even do some consulting with people about precious metals. Now, I mean silver, gold, platinum. Truthfully, folks, when you get past silver and gold, I'm sort of lost. I can tell you websites to go to or something, but one of the things I advise people is don't just buy into these ads that you see some celebrity on television trying to get you to order gold from their source or whatever. Do your due diligence, check around, make sure, because there is a difference in precious metals. And personally, I like silver because silver is a lot more affordable than gold for us, and I like silver. And there's different ways that you can be involved with precious metals as an investment and so forth. And I'm not an expert, but I can certainly direct you to the experts, the people who know that business, and you can check out their credentials and find out that they're very reliable. You can even establish a relationship with a local vendor someplace in your area that you know who's been in business for years and years and years. The Better Business Bureau is aware of that person and their store, and you can do business with them. So I try to give people good advice when they ask me about precious metals. People ask me then about cryptocurrency and Bitcoin. I tell them, you're asking the wrong guy. I don't understand cryptocurrency. I don't understand Bitcoin at all. So therefore, I can't help you. But I can tell you some people who do Bitcoin, who do cryptocurrency, and they can explain it. And hopefully you've got a better brain than mine, and you'll understand the explanation. I don't understand it. That's it. I understand land, water, food, precious metals. That's what I understand. Okay. We also advise people about publishing books. In fact, I have a little publishing operation that has published 6, 7, 8 books or so for other people. The last one was done in softcover and hardcover simultaneously. And I'm glad to provide insight into the book publishing industry. I do know that industry pretty good. And about writing, I know writing pretty good. And here's what's interesting about that, Nancy. I never studied publishing in school. I never studied writing. And in all of my high school work, I had 1 semester in speech. And in all of my college work, I had 1 semester of speech. In seminary, I had 2 semesters of, they were trimesters then, but these semesters now, of what they call homiletics, preaching and worship. In other words, I never was really trained as a public speaker. I was never trained really beyond just what was required in grammar and punctuation and so forth, but I've learned to write, and I enjoy writing, and I can tell others who lack formal training how to write, how to get started, and I have learned how to publish books. And I learned about magazines many years ago when you and I worked in Wichita for an independent parachurch ministry out there that had a monthly magazine. I learned the magazine publishing business and writing. I remember the first article I wrote, I took it in to the woman who was in charge of things and left it. And later she called me in, and I sat down, and she had it in her hand, and she threw it across the desk, threw it at me. She said, "It stinks. Do it over." So I stayed up most of the night that night rewriting, and it passed with flying colors. So I've learned to be, people who know me know that I'm very particular about spelling and punctuation, and I don't appreciate carelessness when people write, whether it's by a text message or an email or a letter, or the people, you see those things that scroll across the bottom of the TV screen, find misspelled words. One that really bothers me, people who say, well, he led me someplace, and they spell lead, L-E-A-D. No, that's lead, or lead the mineral. He led me someplace is L-E-D. Little things like that. Well, guess what? Those things in books or magazine articles and et cetera could make the difference in dollars, how marketable something is. If you're wanting to market it, how many people will go out and buy a new car that's not really new? Not very many. They want it. They want everything right on it. The last car we bought was a program car, and we're still driving it. But remember, it had a little place or two that we asked them to touch up on the body. It had 27,000 miles when we bought it. And we said, we got some things there. They touched it up. And then I asked them for a little bottle of that touch-up paint, remember?
Mm-hmm.
Because we want things right. Your product must be right, even if it's written. You're not going to impress anybody with poor spelling, poor grammar, poor punctuation, unless it's being done on purpose as a storyteller. That's different. That's a whole different scene. So, but publishing and writing, I consult with people about that. I've been consulting with people even about websites, believe it or not. My webmaster, who does drpaulcollins.com, the doctor is abbreviated DR. He's a young sprout. He's only 80. You gotta love it. I mean, this guy was the best salesman I've ever known, ever. And he was looking for a sales job one time, and I knew he was going to go to this place and leave his resume and get an interview, and he was going to give me as a reference. So I called ahead of time and talked to the owner of the company, and I said, I know he's going to give me as a reference. If you can hire him, you better hire him. He is the best salesman I've ever known. I just want to let you know ahead of time that you've got a man coming to see you that can make you a lot of money. He walked in and walked out with the job. And he and I have been good friends all these years. And somehow over the years, he changed vocations, became an organic farmer. And then his knees kind of gave out. He was having trouble getting up and down and had knee replacements. And so he learned to build websites. And that's what he does from his home in a little town outside of Springfield. I want to encourage you. What do I know about websites? I know enough to direct you to axmediagroup.com, and enough to tell you that I know a webmaster. Excuse me. He's probably not taking any new clients now, but he's an example that I don't care if you're 80 years old and you're watching and listening to this and you say, oh, the internet, I don't know anything about it and all that. Well, it's only because you choose that. Choose to know about the internet. Choose, folks, as you get older, the internet's going to become more and more and more important to you. And it's not perfect. Like today, it was down, we were slow getting on the air, but it's a great tool. I remember Jimmy Dunn, great friend, who used to say, "That's a great tool." He'd been referring to things. Anyway, so I do a little consulting about websites even, because my webmaster once in a while will ask me questions, and he does it by email. Now, also, I am involved with 2 older men, training them in theology. So I do consulting in that regard. I'm telling them sources to go to study. One is a retired medical doctor, and he has a great mind, and he wants to learn about theology and Christian doctrine and Christian history. I consult with him regularly. I heard from him this morning. He is proceeding in his studies. Yesterday I heard from the other one, who's in the other one is my age, and he's in a rehab center recovering from some physical problems. Be there for a few weeks. While he's there, he's digging in and studying at my direction, and he calls to consult with me. He has a great mind. Now, here's one guy, a retired medical doctor in his 70s. The other one is a retired military guy and a retired bus driver, 85 years old. They're both learning theology. And there's some of you with like 45 think, well, what's the point in all that? Well, there is a point. You live fully until you die. Mm-hmm. Don't die before you die. Live it. Live all the way. Make every day worth living. Make every day interesting. Learn something. Old brains learn things better than young brains. If I forget something momentarily, I don't say I have a senior moment. I say I'm having a junior moment. My old brain is like a steel trap. Maybe a little rusty, but it's a steel trap. It holds on to everything. My young brain is the one that's really occupied with all that's going on out here and has a tendency to miss out on some things. So whether you're young or old, your brain is important. Now, Nancy, when we get into that new show, starting the first Monday in April at 10 o'clock Central Daylight Time on Acts Media Group, ACTS, Acts Media, M-E-D-I-A Group, GROUP.com. It'll be on Facebook and YouTube and other social platforms as well. We will be dealing with topics that I call it drilling down. In other words, we're going to go deep into some of these topics. We're going to go deep into the taxes in this country, not just on the federal level, but on state level and on local level, not just Springfield. We'll use Springfield as an example, for instance, or Greene County, our county as an example, but it will be applicable to wherever people live, their tax situation. I remember one time I was in Lubbock, Texas. I was conducting a seminar in a local hotel, and I pointed out how much of a person's income goes for taxes. Mm-hmm. And one couple, an older couple, they didn't, during the session, didn't challenge me on it, but it piqued their interest. They went home and they started figuring up, and they came back the next day to the session, and they said that I was within 1% of what their income was going for taxes. So this is important to know. It really is. What is the cost of living? It's not just the supermarket. It's taxes. And some of you say, well, I don't make enough to file federal income tax. Folks, there are all kinds of taxes. Gasoline tax, mm-hmm. Sales tax, there are many property taxes. I've often thought about our public schools, for instance, in this area, they operate on property taxes. What if nobody paid property tax? Well, there goes the school system. Then there are those who say, well, if churches were paying property tax, real estate tax, then our property tax wouldn't be so high. There's an issue that I'm going to deal with when we drill down on some of these topics with the new show, and it's called ecocide, ECOCIDE, instead of suicide, ecocide. One of the ways to commit economic suicide is to shut down all religious activity. I have the facts, the figures, the insights from the experts, people whose credentials are impeccable, to prove that if you take nonprofits, even just the religious nonprofits, even narrow it down to just Christian nonprofits, out of the economic picture of a nation like the United States of America, you'd be committing economic suicide. They call it ecocide. Hang on to that, folks, because we're going to really drill down on that one. Nancy, it's been about 2 or 3 years ago now, I heard some guy interviewing someone on TV, and he said, we're going to unpack this, which meant go deeper into the topic in an interview. I was thinking this morning, besides drill down or unpack, there has to be another term, maybe really do an inventory of situations, inventory it, do something that's revelatory, reveal it. But that's what we like to do with taxes and with ecocide. We'll also talk in detail about budgeting. Groceries have gone up a bunch during the pandemic, and we'll talk about budgeting. We'll talk about how people can start preparing for retirement at age 40. And if you didn't start at age 40, we'll tell you how to kind of go back and redeem the time to catch up. And of course, we'll talk about health, as I mentioned. We'll talk about some relationships between adult parents and adult children. We know about that. And adult parents, adult grandparents, and adult grandchildren, and adult great-grandparents and their little great-grandkids. That's a whole thing out there. And we'll even talk about those who weren't blessed to have children. We'll talk about relationships of all kinds. We'll talk about Social Security. Every day I get a couple of emails from the Social Security Administration, and they're available to anyone. You can sign up for them. They're newsletters, and I save them in a file folder. Every day I get a couple of emails from the Internal Revenue Service. I put all of those in a file folder so that I can go back and learn. You see, if you're going to be paying into Social Security or collecting Social Security, then you need to know something about Social Security. Stay up on it. Well, if you don't have time, I'll take time. We will expose a lot of the ins and outs and ifs and wherefores and whereabouts and et cetera of Social Security and taxes. And we're not experts. So we put our own disclaimer out there. We're not responsible for anything that happens. We're just going to share with you what they send to us, and we will share our personal experience with you. And then we'll even do likewise with Medicare. You may be so young you think, well, I won't be listening come April the 5th at 10 o'clock Central Daylight Time. Because
when they get to be our age or younger, they'll wish they had.
Yeah.
That's the whole thing.
Right now is the time to learn about Medicare, because
Right.
in the event that anyone should become disabled, you are looking at Social Security, a part of it called disability insurance. You're also looking at Medicare, and if your financial situation is such, you may be looking at Medicaid. There's a difference between Medicare and Medicaid. We'll explain all this. It's not going to be boring. This is going to be very interesting stuff. Anytime when you're dealing with people's money, their health, their family issues, it will always be interesting. Now, one of the things that I haven't mentioned yet, which we will drill down on, we will unpack, we will reveal, we'll inventory such things as travel and hobbies. Now, I mentioned earlier how we took one-day trips when we both supposedly retired. Just meant that we were keeping our own schedule now. Somebody else isn't keeping it. But we'll talk about how you can do that, how you can plan for them, and hobbies. And this is going to be really interesting, folks, since you're looking at a guy here and a woman there. We have no hobbies. I gave up golf a long time ago. Nancy gave up bowling a long time ago. I don't paint landscapes or portraits. I haven't been trout fishing in about, well, soon be 6 years. After the first heart attack, I thought I'd recovered, and I went trout fishing. I stood in that stream, worked that fly rod about 15 minutes, and got out of the stream because that's all I could handle. But I love being in a clear, flowing stream and a fly rod, and I can do things with a fly rod that are almost magical. Have for years. But really, we're so busy, we really don't have time for hobbies. But we do know some people who have hobbies. We have a neighbor who is very gifted in art, painting, and in making miniature things. What all does she do anyway? What does Lisa make besides? She makes little houses?
Yeah, little doll houses. And she makes everything. All the furniture, everything.
It's all miniature.
All very miniature. I don't know how she does it. That's not my cup of tea.
Well, it'd be great to have her on the show sometime to talk about her hobbies. Now, her husband, Kim, he's a very gifted man. He is self-taught as a musician, plays violin, taught their 4 girls violin, cello, viola. They've all played in the symphony orchestra of local university here, Drury University. In fact, even though the girls are grown and moved out and gone, Kim still plays for the Drury University Symphony in spite of the pandemic, whenever they get fired back up. But he can play any kind of instrument. He's self-taught, and he can repair them. So it'd be great to have those two. Those are hobbies, and they're very enriching. Well, they have been kind enough to give us extra time today because we were slow getting on the air because the internet was down for a little bit. But we're not going to take advantage of their kindness toward us time-wise. Do want to say to the folks that it's been an honor and a privilege to do the happy hour for, I've forgotten, maybe 3 years, 4 years, I don't remember how long. The last, most of those years, all but about the first year, Nancy's been my co-host, and that's been a real honor. She will be my co-host starting April 5th on Monday at 10 o'clock Daylight Savings Time for the Bucket List. And we're going to help you, folks. You can depend on it. We're going to, as they say in the Ozarks, we're going to help you. We're going to help you. Well, Matthew, thank you very much for your kindness, and we will see you April the 5th. Until then, folks, stay blessed.